know who he is.
I didn't say I don't know who he is.
Okay, Steve Carell there as the titular Burt Wonderstone, and Jim Carrey as Steve Gray. So, Burt Wonderstone has a show with Anton Marvelton, played by Steve Buscemi, and it's sort of a buddy sort of duo. And they're threatened by the arrival of the audacious Steve Gray, who's a street musician who does pretty extreme things.
And the definition of street magician is very loose,
yeah,
I think. And that's something that the movie plays up upon, at least, anyway.
Sure, like he's kind of like the extreme sports version of David Copperfield, I guess. I wasn't really sure where he was going with his Steve Gray thing. It reminded me a lot of Chris Angel, who's been on TV for a few years now. Is he a street magician?
Yeah, he's a street magician. He plays up this sort of rock god angle, and he's extremely laughable, basically.
Okay.
I do get the feeling that if sort of Steve Carell is the David Copperfield, then Jim Carrey is the Chris Angel is the guy on the street who's not really doing traditional magic. What he's doing is probably more legitimately magic than what Jim Carrey's character Steve Gray is doing in this movie, because really Steve Gray in this movie is just basically almost like Johnny Knoxville.
I was thinking the jackass angle. He's just doing really horrible bodily harm to himself.
That's right. Yeah.
To shock people, and calling it magic, essentially.
That's right. Yeah, he's just hurting himself,
Yeah.
and it's quite right that Steve Carell and Steve Buscemi's characters as old school Las Vegas strip magicians performing every single night, grown up as best friends and so on. It makes sense that they're outraged by this character for sure.
So this film had a lot of promise. Looking at the poster, just to see these guys in their ridiculous sort of Vegas-style makeup and costumes, I had the same sort of surge of adrenaline when I saw the original Anchorman poster. I just thought, this is going to be amazing. It just looked
absolutely
perfect. And I just
couldn't
thought,
wait.
Yeah, they could do no wrong, because these actors are fantastic, and putting them in this ridiculous scenario would be perfect. There couldn't be much to stuff this film up. I was pretty let down, though. I felt that it started really strong and then took a nosedive. Dave, we haven't discussed this at all, so I have no idea what you thought of this film, but
No.
I was on board for the first half hour, and then it fell into such simple genre conventions that were so boring, and there was no edge to it. There was no ideas. There was nothing irreverent. There was nothing zany or crazy. It just followed this simple plot, and when it finished, when the credits roll, I just thought, is that it? Is that really... You're going to end the film just now?
It's such a disappointment.
Yeah.
It's exactly as you said. It starts off, the promotion leading up to this movie, I have not been as excited to see a movie for a very, very long time. It's very rare that I go into the cinema and you're hotly anticipating a movie, and this was one of them, because the promotion looks so funny. These guys in character, Steve Carell and and Steve Buscemi, dressed up as these sort of aging, mulleted,
Steve
bronze
Carell's
tans.
wig with the hair and the sort of the grey streaks in there. It looks so good.
There's so much potential. And then I couldn't say I completely agree with you that I was on board for the first half hour. I did go in with extremely good intentions, because I really, really wanted this to be funny. But it became obvious that there's a soundtrack that plays, the screen goes dark, music starts playing, and then something fades up. I would have to say I was a little bit put off from the very beginning, just because of the music that started playing. I thought was totally off tone. It was a very sort of nostalgic piece, and I instantly got the feeling that we're going to be going through either some sort of a friendship story or some sort of a typically cliched Hollywood format.
And I was completely okay with that cliched friendship story, though. So the film starts off with the Burt Wonderstone and Anton Marvelton as children, as misfits in the early 80s, trying to, learning how to do magic and stuff, and getting beaten up by the jocks and whatnot. And it's very silly, and the child actors I thought were great. And then it obviously skips forward to their stage show now in Vegas.
If I can just stop you there.
Sure.
When it does skip forward, you have the transition of Burt Wonderstone, his character as a child being one that is bullied and picked upon, and he makes friends with Anton Marvelton through his magic, because he gets a magic kit for Christmas.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, when it does cut forward, Burt Wonderstone has become a womanizing asshole. This might be a minor gripe, but if we're going to go through through the movie, I want to get this out of the way early. Is that his transition felt anything but believable, because he starts off as this really meek guy who can possibly make friends and make people like him through his magic. Instead, what happened was he liked his magic and he used it to I don't know, to make a lot of money and then to look down upon people and to have a lot of sex and get a lot of girls and treat people really badly. I think the idea is, though, Dave, he's been in this sort of bubble because he's been working at the same casino for as long as he has, and he is more or less a celebrity within the walls of that casino, but no one else really cares about their little magic show. And apparently this is very, very close to a lot of these Vegas magician shows, is that they are this camp and ridiculous. Oh, and that's fine. I'm just saying the concept was that I think it all went to his head because he was in his own little zone all the time. But okay, no, that's fine, but we're never shown the transition where it did go to his head. What we're shown, we're set up with a guy that wants to make friends, and what we're given is a guy that repels everything that's close to him, and we don't even get close to a redemption of that sort even towards the end of the movie. So it felt like this setup of just, of no real point. It was an odd choice. On the one hand, it was quite bold to make Steve Carell such an arsehole because he usually plays pretty likable characters. It was very surprising. He's good at that. Yeah. And at the start, I was kind of interested because I was like, this is nice. It's different. It's Steve Carell being a bad guy, and obviously, as these films go, he's going to have to go through some trials, and he's going to learn to be a better person. But when that inevitably happened, there was no real reason for him to be a better person. It just sort of happened because the plot demanded it. I didn't care for him at all. In fact, I actively disliked him for most of the film. He treated everyone horribly, as you said, and when he becomes sort of a better person in, hyphenated commas, you don't believe it, and you don't care, and you don't want him to get the girl and to win and do all the good things that these films do. Well, no, because he's an asshole. He's a hideous person. And yeah, that aside, the plot is just so slim. There's nothing going on in this film. I did enjoy Jim Carrey a lot. This is one of there are individual performances and there are individual moments which I thought were funny. I did laugh a few times. I'm not saying that I sat there with my arms crossed being angry at the screen. I didn't. I enjoyed moments. But honestly, it was a very underwhelming film. It's not. It's definitely not a complete failure. That's for sure. I think it's probably easiest to talk about this movie in two sections. You have the comedy half, and then you have the drama half, which is a shame because the two should be seamlessly melded. Yeah. And I couldn't help but think, and I know that this is a tough ask, but I couldn't help but think, Walk Hard is so funny. Mm-hmm. Why can't you even just get close to something? Because you're given such a great world where Walk Hard had this great world of music, musical parodies to make fun of, and this has a whole world of magic, and it's such a great setup. The characters look great. Everything is perfect, and then the laughs just sort of they're there. Occasionally, and I did laugh occasionally. Like you said, I was not a Grinch about this movie at all. I don't think it's a failure by any means. It's just very disappointing. The comedy never really hits its points because it's being overtaken so much by the Hollywood formula. And halfway through it, I just couldn't help but think, if you're not going to make me laugh through this supposed comedy, then can you just get to the point where you need to resolve your problems, because we know that they're going to be resolved, so that we can go home. Yeah. No, I totally agree. You've also got Olivia Wilde in an underwritten, undervalued role, and she does a great job. I thought she was pretty impressive, and I'm not usually a fan of her work. I haven't really been in the past, but I thought she did a great job in a very small, almost token female role, which is really a shame because she does have talent. Yeah, and it's kind of ironic that was her character. Her character was the magician's assistant. Her character was the underappreciated female, and that is exactly what she was in the cast. She didn't have the good lines, she didn't have the good character development, she was just there, she looked pretty, and she served her purpose. So, that's right, and she said the right things at the right time to keep the plot moving. It was kind of depressing that was essentially what they were trying to poke fun at, but that's what they ended up doing. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, covered Steve Carell. Steve Buscemi is a really odd casting choice in this, and obviously Steve Buscemi is the kind of guy that if you like movies, he has to be one of your favorite character actors just because he is so good. He's consistently good. And in this, he tries his best. I don't think he's really given that much meat to He's given nothing. No, he's given really nothing to work with. He's given a very wholesome character, which is supposed to be a counterpoint to Steve Carell,
hell's bastard. But the thing is, he just doesn't have enough to go with. This is why I thought of Death to Smoochie, because Edward Norton's character in Death to Smoochie is so overwhelmingly wholesome, and that's pretty much what you're getting from Steve Buscemi here. He's playing the good guy, the guy that you do root for and stuff, but he's just not in the film enough to care.
That's right.
Yeah.
He actually goes for a very, very long time without being in the movie.
And you're stuck with Steve Carell being a dick, and you don't care.
So what's going on?
No.
And so at what point? Yeah, and at least if you're not going to care about them, then at the least they could do is make you laugh.
Yeah,
and the
agree.
Jokes are so few and far between.
I feel
and
it was
never
overwritten. It was like they had these jokes and they thought, no, let's just keep fine-tuning that until we get it. And because they just feel that they've really been overthought and there's not enough spontaneity. I mean, this is why Anchorman is one of the greatest comedies of all time, is because there's so much left field stuff just thrown out there and you're not expecting it at all. And it doesn't have to adhere to the plot at all.
That's
it just
right.
has to be there. It has to be funny because it's a freaking comedy.
Exactly.
This
it surprises you.
Not a comedy. It's barely a comedy because it's just not that funny.
That's right. And when it is funny, it is so tame. And that's not to say that I didn't laugh. I did laugh every now and then.
Yeah.
Did you have the benefit of seeing this in a busy theater by any chance? Did you get to gauge a audience?
No, I wasn't busy.
reaction?
To be honest, Aaron and I were probably laughing more than anyone else there. We were trying to stifle our laughter because we were being a bit loud sometimes, and this
Right.
is only in the moments that it warranted. But unfortunately, I would have liked to see it in a packed cinema with people that really appreciated it.
Yeah, okay. Well, I can't say. I only just saw it today, and I had to go to a really early morning screening, and there were probably about 4 other people in there, and they laughed at the points that I didn't, and I laughed at the points that...
Okay.
Vice versa. But it was very... I'm very curious as to how this will be received, because the laughs are so tame. So I don't know. And also, to get to Jim Carrey, who does play this sort of third wheel, it's very obvious when they cut to his character, and I couldn't help but feel that his role in it was one of those things where they arranged 3 days of filming in a row just so that they could afford Jim Carrey and get his parts done, because he does play such a separate part. It was actually, the clip that we heard is him interacting with Burt Wonderstone.
One of the only times in the entire film.
Yeah, and it almost feels like that moment in Heat where you get Robert De Niro to face Al Pacino, and you go, oh, actually, that's right. This isn't 2 separate movies.
Yeah, it's the
They're
same
actually
movie,
coming
yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And it was very strange, and Jim Carrey's character never really hit these sort of comedic high points, which, again, the promotion of the film, or even just sort of leaked photos of him on set, he looks so good.
Yes.
And when he came on for the first scene, I was laughing just at the look of him.
Me too, and there was just so much unfulfilled potential throughout this whole film with every character. You feel that there could have been many, many different ways they could have gone to make this a hilarious comedy classic, and they dropped the ball at every intersection. It was shocking. Jim Carrey I still enjoyed more than anyone else, just because I do have so much fondness for that man because of his previous work where he does hit the high points. He has, a lot of duds
his
in his
face generates
repertoire.
a lot of goodwill. By this point, if you're not one of the anti-Carrey man,
but no, and he was good. And you got James Gandolfini there as well, playing an evil, the bad guy, I guess.
No, not even really the bad guy. Just the guy that's running the casino where Burt Wonderstone has to put his shows on. He's just a guy obsessed with money.
I'd say he was miscast, but then I couldn't think of anyone else in that role because it's just not a great role.
No, I actually thought that he was cast very well.
Yeah.
It was nice to see him in not such a trademarked sort of role where he can look a little bit different and he can sort of try and ham it up a little bit. For me, when he was on screen, he was definitely not funny enough. But that was a problem with almost every character in this movie, is that you look at them and you expect greatness, and you get mediocrity, which is basically the summation of the movie. But I actually enjoyed when he was on. Similar with Alan Arkin, who
Playing
I have
Alan
to say
Arkin,
I did spot from his voice before seeing his face.
Nice.
And very proud of that fact. They did a very good job of making him look older than he actually is. Most people probably would have seen him in Argo most recently as one of the film producers with John Goodman. What did you think of Alan Arkin? I had no idea he was in this movie.
No, me either. Look, he's pretty much just playing a version of himself again, which is fine. He's earned it, He's at that point in his career where people know what they're going to get, and they hire him to play this sort of very sarcastic, sort of self-aware character, and that's fine. I love Alan Arkin, always have. He's great. this film just is I don't know, it fumbles. It has these great setups. It just doesn't deliver. It's a shame.
That's right. It's like it has you on the edge of your seat, ready and about to laugh, and then it just doesn't deliver. And it's a shame because apparently Steve Carell, this is a project that was very close to his heart, so he worked on it very hard. Apparently, but what you end up with is how we talk about all the time is this sort of machine-written scripts.
Totally.
Is that you know from the first 10 minutes is that there will be a falling out and that there will be a reparation of sorts and that everything will come to pass in, acceptable time. Yep. And it really is just a case of getting halfway through the movie and then sort of, looking at the clock and waiting for it to end. And it's such a shame because it looks so promising. So I could not recommend this to anyone, but at the same time, I think it's not terrible. This is probably something that would be better judged at home. This might be a better at-home watch.
When it gets a home video release and you've got a pizza and you want to watch a diverging movie, it'll be fine. It's just not something to spend money on at the cinema.
That's right. Yeah. It doesn't warrant your undiverted attention, and it doesn't warrant your hard-earned dollars. I would easily say that. This is one that you could easily skip. But the other films out this week are really